Okay, that's enough of the music for the copyright reasons. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the show. My name is James Rink. I'm the host of Super Soldier Talk, and I'm here with Missy Hill to make the amazing announcement of this tour that Missy Hill is putting on April 11th and 13th of this year, 2025. And Missy, how are you doing today? Thanks for coming on here.
Right. And I just want to share these natural quartz crystals because I'm actually coming to you from Western North Carolina, from Hot Springs, or the Trust part of Hot Springs. And if everybody knows what happened last year in Western North Carolina with Hurricane Helene, these rocks have made it, and they are a staple to hang on to the crystals. And just for people's information, North Carolina and South Carolina before 1729 was just called the Carolinas. And we have a trail, a hiking trail called the Mountains to Sea Trail, where you can actually start in the mountains and go all the way to the sea. James and I happened to be so lucky to meet each other in person last year at the Appalachian Starseed reunion over 8/8 in Old Fort, and that was really a good time. Wasn't that great, James?
Yeah, and Old Fort got flooded out too. We
It
went
really, yeah.
we went to this little this brewery with Barry Littleton, and it was an amazing place, but unfortunately it's closed. So, but what about you, Missy? Did you get flooded out?
Well, actually, I escaped it because I was in Black Mountain up until September 14th, which was Ron's birthday. And because he had family coming in, we had to go back to Edisto. Hurricane Debbie was actually much worse down there because I actually go back and forth between Western North Carolina and Edisto Island, South Carolina, which is really close to the Charleston area. So when down in Edisto, we only lost power for about 2 or 3 days. In Hot Springs, they lost it for about 5 days. My old house in Fletcher lost it for about 15 days. And my friend who you met, Alma Soul, who was over at the Starseed Gathering, they lost it in the Burnsville Spruce Pine area for about 30 days. It was pretty bad. And as we know, Chimney Rock and Lake Lure who knows if it'll ever recover. It's crazy.
So
But with
certainly those areas got about 32 inches of rain, right,
yeah,
Missy? The worst hit parts. So
and
all that
we're
water it's not going to get absorbed into the ground. It's going to go right into the valleys there, where unfortunately there was little towns, and there's unfortunately, but
exactly, and the
fortunately
last
for
flood,
them.
that last flood, there was the Great Flood of 1916, which I talk about all the time on my Biltmore Village Mystery Tour that has been canceled till further notice. However, they are working on the Biltmore Village, so I'll be able to get that going. So since last year, from 1916 to 2024 was 108 years. So we know the significance of 108 with the mala beads and everything like that. So yeah, we've been under craziness, not only hurricanes, these weather wars, but we also had the deep freeze this past winter, where even Edisto Island got 2 inches of ice and 2 inches of snow. And my partner who's doing the tour with me, it's actually under her header, which is Indigo Angel in Pensacola. They got a lot of snow there, and they got it in Louisiana. And what's happening is this is all coming from Stargate 2. What is the importance of what's going to be going on in Charleston? Charleston is part of the Bermuda Triangle. And I became aware of the importance of the Bermuda Triangle back in 2013 when I happened to go to Puerto Rico a couple times with my friend Joshua P. Warren, who is a regular on Coast to Coast AM. When I went to Puerto Rico, the first time I happened to go to in 2013, I went to a place called San Cristobal, which is a fort. And at one of the watchtowers there, which is called the Point of the Bermuda Triangle, La Garita del Diablo, which people call the point of the point of the point, one of the 3 points that connect the dots between the tip of Miami, La Garita del Diablo, and a spot in Bermuda, I'm not sure, is the Devil's Triangle or the Bermuda Triangle. I was shown that this was a feminine vortex that was plasma and became weaponized. And the way I was shown that is there was all these iguanas that tend to guard this area at La Garita del Diablo, where they sun themselves, where you can walk out to the point and you can get a really good picture of the cliffs and the water. And I start hearing them saying they were connected to the goddess Inanna, which is an Anunnaki goddess. And I'm not saying I subscribe to the Anunnaki at all, because I don't. I mean, I did study, of course, Zachariah Sitchin and the 12th planet and the last book of Enki, because I just think, he has some pieces when it comes to the Sumerian tablets, but I don't resonate 100% with it. But when they said that they were just as much under this patriarchal domination, that they didn't like the situation that they were put in, and this is what the Bermuda Triangle was. It was like goddess energy, kind of like Pele. If anybody knows, if you go to Hawaii and you always hear, don't ever take the volcanic rock out without asking or doing a ceremony or it being gifted, because it can give you bad luck. Well, that's because of the goddess Pele, which is actually like the scorned woman. And a scorned woman, when she's mad as hell, she's a bitch, right? So,
Watch the language. Children might listen to this. But hey,
oh, okay. We're
Missy,
not FCC regulated on this.
no, we're
I
not
don't take.
regulated by any of that. But hey, Missy, if you have a sock or a shirt nearby, the wind is blowing into the mic a little bit. But if you want to go
Oh,
grab something real quick, while I read your bio here, if you want to,
oh,
it's your call if you want to do it.
oh boy. I don't.
Okay.
I have to go inside. But what I can do
Oh,
is
audience
read.
members, do you want
I'm
Missy to
gonna
go
mute,
inside?
I'm
Let's see.
gonna mute myself while you talk.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's see here. Hill is spearheading the America the Beautiful Let Freedom Ring Planetary Healing and Gridwork Tour on April 11th to 13th, 2025 in Charleston, South Carolina. My fan blowing on me. This transformative event is focused on clearing the seeds of contention and war codes to restore unity consciousness. Through amplifying and working with the crystalline grid and Christ consciousness, she is dedicated to bringing the rainbow of peace to the Earth's grid. This mission is designed to prevent war, heal the impact of the first shots fired of the Civil War, facilitate global seal removal, and address the devastation caused by hurricanes. The focal point of this work is in Charleston, South Carolina, a historically significant city nestled in the heart of the Low Country. Originally founded as Charlestown in 1670 and renamed after King Charles II, Charleston was once the fourth largest and wealthiest colonial city. In 1775, it served as the seat of the Provincial Congress, which played a pivotal role in the creation of the state of South Carolina before its division with North and South Carolinas. Despite being a Union territory, so Charleston, they broke off. It became one of the Confederate states after the attack of Fort Sumter on April 12th, 1861, marking the beginning of the Civil War. This event seeded deep contention and connected with its rifts into the time-space continuum, reinforcing fallen systems such as slavery matrices, victims to victimizer, and predator to prey dynamics, black hole entities from WISA 666, Phantom Phoenix wormholes, and the Bermuda Triangle, as well as Jehovian seals. Charleston's significance extends beyond history. Situated on a fault line and within the Bermuda Triangle, the city also has crystal pyramids off its coast. As part of this planetary mission, Missy Hill and her team will clear major global J seals along the 70-degree horizontal ley line, addressing distortions that have influenced Earth's energetic structure. With its rich yet turbulent past, Charleston remains haunted by the ghosts of history, including legendary pirates like Blackbeard. A key element of this mission includes visiting Fort Sumter to clear past timelines connected to Abraham Lincoln, Thanksgiving, the Civil War, the slave trade, and splinter reversal technologies. These technologies have contributed to extreme polarities such as black versus white, divine feminine versus masculine, north versus south, red versus blue, rich versus poor, and human versus AI. Through this mission, Missy Hill is committed to restoring unity consciousness and embedding peace codes into the planetary grid, working to heal historical imbalances and usher in a new era of harmony. So the link is in the description. Welcome to the show, Missy, again. How was that intro? Did I kill
That
it pretty
was
good?
awesome.
Okay,
I'm
go
reading
ahead.
these comments. What is this guy saying? Why does Missy have a male skull? I don't know. I'm notice I'm looking weird. I don't look like I normally look with this streaming device. That's okay though. It doesn't matter. So sometimes when I have to give the gusto because some of us are neither male nor female. I mean, I'm female here, and I don't buy into any of that transgender stuff. I'm going to get into part of the Tavern at Rainbow Row clearing is to do with the algorithms and the transhumanistic agenda. But on the higher level, it's not about it's about being integrated between masculine and feminine. And that's kind of some weird, some different kind of comments that I've never received before. But anyway, I'm trying to think where I was, what I was talking about. So I'm trying to give a back view of the Bermuda Triangle. The only thing with those Jehovian seals, they actually run vertical. So the seventh seal is actually in Charleston, and if that seal isn't cleared, it could cause catastrophic events, to the whole East Coast, and part of Florida could be underwater. We don't want to focus too much on the beast technology, but what I was saying with how this triangulates with uh, Stargate 2 and Siesta Key, Sarasota, where there were crystal generators there from Atlantis that were blown up, and that's why you have the crystal sands. So what is important is when I went down to Florida recently. Okay, so in the month of January, after all that ice and snow that South Carolina got and North Carolina got, because I spent most of January in North Carolina and then went back to South Carolina, and then in February we were going to visit family, and we went on a cruise, on the Margaritaville cruise in that left out of the port of Palm Beach. Now, when I first got into Palm Beach Gardens, and tell me, James, if this is a little bit better as far as the microphone goes. Is it better as far as the wind?
It is 100% better. Thank you, Missy. Whatever you did, I
I'm just going to
appreciate
hold it closer to me and talk softer, and you can't see all of me, but that's okay. You can see my background here. I'll show you the sky, so you don't have to see
it.
me.
Can you tell people what part of the world you're in right now?
I'm actually in Western North Carolina. As I said in the beginning, I'm in Trust, North Carolina, which is part of Springs, and it's about an hour and 15 minutes north of Asheville, North Carolina.
Very
And I've
good.
told people about my Biltmore Village mystery tour. So when I went down to Florida and I went into Palm Beach Gardens, I felt the energy of the regime change, and I also felt that the Stargate 2 had been moved temporarily to Mar-a-Lago, which I found very interesting. Now, I'm not saying that this Stargate is natural; it's artificial. But for me, and even though it was still positive to bring some things around that I actually had to see from my past when I lived in Florida years ago. So it was very interesting, and interesting to see that the regime change is all about Atlantis, and that the Atlanteans are back, and that these Atlanteans, I would say, they're part of the dark priest class, and but they have a chance to get it right this time. So they're the Anunnaki, the highest Elohim Anunnaki that are working through these beings, and they're Luciferians. So that's a lot better than having the satanic ones in there that do the sacrifices and all that stuff. So things are going to get more cleaned up than they were, but we have to still hold a lot of people accountable, just as we did in times past. So everybody's probably wondering why Charleston. Well, it's because, as I said, Charleston is actually part of the Bermuda Triangle. And when those shots were fired on April 12th of 1860, I can't remember the year now. I'll have to look at the exact year, but it's under
I think it's
Abraham.
61.
Huh? Is it 61? I'm thinking 64, but I think that was the end of it. the thing, because I've got so much in my brain right now that I just got to slow it down and take a breath. Everybody take a deep breath as we get into this, because this could may be triggering for some people, some of this information that comes forth. So when I was there in 2015 and I took the ferry boat to Fort Sumter, me and my husband Ron, I knew then that war codes were done on Fort Sumter, and I saw actually how it connected into Mount Mitchell. Mount Mitchell is a mountain in western North Carolina that resides at 6,684 feet, and that mountain started speaking to me, telling me it held Civil War timelines back in 2012 when I worked the Star Knowledge Conference. If anybody knows about Star Knowledge, that's where I met Laura Eisenhower for the first time. And I saw that the whole thing had to be cleared with uh, the war between the masculine and feminine, rich against poor, black against white, north against south, red versus blue, just all kinds of race wars and all kinds of victimizer programming, predator prey programs. All that was like speaking from the mountain to Fort Sumter. Now, Fort Sumter, what that is there is they actually made an artificial island, but because it was part of a female vortex, I felt that it was actually feminine in nature, and they had, and put it as a masculine, but not even true masculine, because it's weaponized. When anybody does any kind of war codes, that's like that trauma memory is held in the grids there. And I can give you an example, because when I went to Manassas, when I was an over the road truck driver in Virginia, I happened to actually just be going to a Barnes and Noble to take a break, use the bathroom, and get some coffee when we were driving. And we took a walk out back, and from the back side of where we're just taking a hike. We didn't even know we were in Manassas National Park, and I feel like I'm standing there and I'm like on a mass grave. I'm like, oh my God. I feel all these bodies and everything were just buried here. Little to find out that when we actually went back into the Barnes and Noble, we turned to a book and to the very page of where this Battle of Manassas was. So yeah, it's trauma is held in the grids. They even have pictures, like if somebody looks through night vision goggles, because I have these third generation night vision goggles, and a lot of times on infrared cameras, they'll have pictures of ghost ships or soldiers walking across the battlefields, like at Gettysburg. There's people captured all kinds of pictures like that. It's probably, people are saying, like that guy was saying, that the my masculine energy coming forth, because I'm on super soldier talk, and I feel like many of us are soldiers. We're in this soldier program, and even if we're not soldiers on the earth, we're soldiers in the galactic realms, in the astral realms, in the interdimensional realms. And you know what? So many of us, we are tired of fighting. We're exhausted from this. Can you relate, James?
Absolutely. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. Since 2010 was the first time the word super soldier talk appeared, and even when I was doing stuff even before that. But yeah, it's a never ending process, and I don't, Missy. I mean, we can't stop, right? We've come here incarnated into this realm because we want to help raise the consciousness of the planet.
And that masculine goddess too. Sometimes the goddess has to be masculine, because I have a lot of Norwegian and German, so I'm European, and I've aligned with my ancestral lineage of that, which would be a shield maiden. You would be a warrior. You would be out there fighting on the battlefield. Now, I don't think this physical body could take that now, but in other timelines, that's what you had to do. You worked your butt off. It was from morning till night, and you were being a protector. So I've been put in place to be a protector of the grids in the Carolinas, Western North Carolina and South Carolina. Not that I even, wanted to be in South Carolina. That was more my husband's doing, because I knew we were not supposed to go back to Florida. Although, interestingly enough, I'm going to be spending more time in Florida too. What was interesting too, when I went down to Florida this time, the energy felt much more positive than it ever had, and I didn't see one chemtrail, not a one, which that made me very happy. So it was much lighter and a much cleaner energy. But my concern now with the timeline that we're on, even though there's a lot of positive things coming to the light, is the AI timeline, the rush towards the singularity and the AI. So does anybody have any questions so far with where we're going with this before I break down what the tour is actually going to look like?
Yeah, we have some questions from the chat, but yeah, how about this? Maybe could you explain a little bit about grid work? How is it done? From Jason.
Okay. I became aware myself that I was a grid worker when I went to, okay, let me give you the short Cliff Notes version of this. My husband and I were living in Georgia at the time, in a place called Winder, Georgia, staying in a state park called Fort Yargo State Park. And there was this one day that was like a surreal day. You have these certain days that stand out. It was like surreal. The weather was just perfect. And I was actually playing with a Rand McNally map, because I'm a person that loves the old maps. And I get out the Rand McNally and I'm playing with my pendulum, and and I got I'm out at the four corners, back and forth with my pendulum, and my pendulum kind of lands like right in the middle, and I actually hear this audible voice inside my head that says, "You're going to go over the road as a truck driver to do grid work." And I'm like, okay. And then later that day, I saw a guy doing falconry with a hawk. He had the glove, and I was watching him. This hawk fly around. It was landing on his glove, and I was thinking that was so cool. And he was getting a bird's eye view of looking down. Well, that's how I kind of see. And this was in the days before Scribbles maps and things like this, and doing everything with Google Earth. I mean, I did it with the old maps. So when I was told this, what happened was I went to truck driving school because I love traveling and I love adventure. So we started going to all these places, and I would notice how they made me feel, and I would notice storylines that would come up. Like, especially if I went to battlefields or I went to church graveyards, many times I would hear it would be soul collectives that would speak to me. Like one time in Puerto Rico and also in Ireland, this stands out. I'll give you the time in Puerto Rico. They were waiting for an advocate for the land to show up, which means I stood in this graveyard as I was walking, and I was hearing them say, "You're an advocate for the land, and we can be seen, witnessed, and all this stuff before we move on." I'm like, okay, that's cool. So what it's kind of like is like you're like an acupuncture point. So if anybody knows about meridians, let's take the gallbladder meridian that runs down the side of your neck. Oh, by the way, here's my braids from the Bahamas. I got my hair braided in Freeport, and I still have the braids because I wanted that Viking hair where you put the hair back in the Dutch braid. You have that. It's like the reverse thing, and you got all this stuff. Anyway, so if you have the gallbladder meridian running down the side, you could have it on the side of your leg, and it can affect your foot, and it could go all the way up. That's kind of the way we are on the grids. And people have heard a lot about the 33rd parallel and all the black magic and bad things that they do on that 33rd parallel, right, with sacrifice. Well, according to Voyagers, I mean, some people may or may not like Helonic science, Ashiana Dean. I'm just using, don't look at people, and everybody has their own thing, but her body of work is very important for understanding certain things, as well as Lisa Renee from Energetic Synthesis. And according to what they type, these indigo types, I always knew I was an indigo. I mean, I came in knowing I was an indigo because my aura was mostly blue and purple. So when I had my aura photography done, I knew I was an indigo. Now my aura's changed and it's got lots of colors, but I'm saying if I didn't do any work on myself, it would have been like this dark purplish blue. And So being an indigo type 1, what that means is that person is mostly a grid worker. Now there's an indigo type 2, which is the healer, the person that does hands-on healing, massage work, counseling, tarot readings. I mean, I've done that too. The indigo 3 is like the polarity worker, where you're kind of like, you could be sharing your body with the fallen angelic to host them back to go home for rehabilitation. A lot of indigo 3s have problems with alcohol, drugs, things like that. Some of us even work the indigo 3 template, not having those addiction problems, just to help, because there wasn't enough of us originally coming in. So we've had to hold all 3 indigo types, 1, 2, 3. And then my friend Indigo Angel, Amanda, but she goes by Indigo Angel on YouTube, who I'm working with, she talks about an indigo type 4. But by default, my default setting always goes back to that indigo 1. And I'm more released now from having to hold 2 and 3. Thank God. I can just be the indigo 1. And the indigo 1 a lot of times is what's called a psychic grid reader, which means you can see psychically. And this is not the same as being a remote viewer, like somebody like Ed Dames. Okay. um if anybody knows Ed Dames, he's been on Coast to Coast. That's somebody that's trained in remote viewing, that will set out to actually look at a target and go see a target. I don't do that. This is spirit doing this through me, or in my dream state. Yeah, I've been in the underground bases, things like that, and seen stuff that goes on, but I don't set out to do this. I don't. It's not something I set out to do. It's like done through me. When the personality of Missy gets out of the way, I'm able to see this stuff. I can't, it's not that I turn it on and turn it off. But I do allow myself to be an open channel and expect that I will channel, if you will. I don't really like that word, but be able to read the grids when I show up at a location. But that's because I've also already done the work on that location. So it comes through different times, and then I'm able to integrate it, and then more pieces come in. Because like years ago when I went to Puerto Rico, I was told that the Bermuda Triangle was a weaponized feminine vortex that was plasma, that was reversed, and all this stuff, and that's why the ships go down. But lately I've also been told that it's a Lemurian, before Atlantis, birthing center, and the beautiful blue water by the Bahamas is actually a nursery. It's a nursery where things from the interdimensional off-world, creational codes from the internal eternal creation comes from these cathedral networks, and it's able to get in from underneath through the underground aquifers, like those beautiful aquifers down in Florida, and going down into the caverns in Mexico and things like that. It's not coming from the sky grids, because we know the sky grids have been totally weaponized with the principalities and powers of the air, with the spraying and all the other stuff they're doing. So that's a little bit of a background on grid work. I hope that answers your question, and I know that was long-winded.
Wow, Misty. Yeah, thank you for that. So that was amazing. So, can you tell us, have you ever experienced a different timeline?
Yes, there's times I felt. I have a friend that recently really experienced it. I've experienced it with ghosts and things like that. I mean, and seen. Well, I'm trying to think. On the road, when I was out in Kansas and some of those weird places, and you feel like it's the Wild Wild West. I can't even, like Bonnie and Clyde stuff. Looking at that museum, and also in what was it called? Hannibal, Missouri. I went to the wax museum of Mark Twain, Sam Clemens, and it actually looked like his wax figure was like alive, and it was breathing, and it was on Hill Street, and this thunderstorm, and they had a haunted house. I mean, I was in a different timeline then. I mean, I experienced different timelines a lot, but this is like, you almost feel like you should actually have the costume on that you wear, like when you get the old timey pictures. Even in Arkansas, on my Arkansas trip last year, it kind of felt that way when I went to that wax museum, and when I went to the hotel. I'm trying to think of what the name of it now. The Arlington Hotel, where you can get the hot springs water and drink it. It's piped everywhere. So what's the beauty of Hot Springs, Arkansas? They don't charge you for the healing waters that actually come out on the rocks at 160 degrees in Hot Springs National Park, which is actually right in the center of town. You know, the crystals are very important in Hot Springs, but the water, that's what holds the codes and the healing. You need you need the water to activate the crystals. So when I went to that Arlington hotel, I got to see the room where Al Capone was. You know, I didn't go inside the room, but I'm thinking, isn't it interesting? Like the mob, they're drawn to these healing places, and this was before Las Vegas. So yeah, I just find it interesting. So there's times like that where you feel like you're living in another timeline. But I have a friend that recently felt like she told her husband, she's like, "Would you bring me my carriage?" And this was when she was in South Carolina. She actually felt like she was wearing the big hoop skirt and the gloves and the hats and the whole thing, and her husband was wearing like that Abraham Lincoln top hat. She could feel him in that. So yeah, there's different levels of being in different timelines. I've also felt the futuristic timelines, like when I was in Fort Lauderdale near Miami years ago. I actually saw myself with a tail and legs and a tail, like a mer person. And the houses, you know, it was like half asleep, half awake. It was one of those, like, you're not sleeping, so you're like it's a lucid dream. And hearing this crystal underwater that was like a magenta crystal, and you could on land have feet, and then you'd swim to it. We're able to breathe underwater, have a tail, and there were these white round houses. We have a roundhouse in Edisto when you come. That's actually a Deltec, but this looked like the Maldives. If anybody's been to the Maldives, I haven't been personally, but I love to look at pictures from around the world. All the houses are built on stilts, and they're actually in the water. Also in the Charleston area and in different parts of South Carolina and Georgia, anywhere on the coast, especially Edisto, if you're on the coast, you're required to build your house on stilts because of flooding. So you're about 10 to 12 feet off the ground just on stilts for that too. But this is like a timeline memory of all homes were on stilts, and they were in the water, and you could actually have a boat or swim to your place, or like some kind of elevator thing that would take you up. I mean, that's I don't know if anybody has any kind of memories of that kind of thing. So I hope that answers that question, because I could probably go on and on if I get into my memory and try to figure out where the memories are for that.
Maybe turn the microphone a little bit outside. I would try to get out, block the wind. But hey, yes. Have you ever like walked into a graveyard? Well, maybe not a graveyard. Maybe like an old area, historical area, and suddenly you're back in that era. You can see like the horse-drawn carriages and the men with the top hats and all that dresses, ladies with dresses.
That's what happened. That's what happened in Manassas. I could actually see the soldiers walking. I saw the soldiers when I saw that mass grave. That's how I knew it was a grave, because I saw the soldiers walking. I don't always see it that way, but there I did, where I knew there were soldiers. I could tell by what they were wearing. Some were in uniform, some weren't, because not all of the soldiers that were fighting in the Civil War wore uniforms at that time.
Very good. All right, so let's go to the next question. How about you go over what's going to happen on the 3 days of the tour? Where are we going? Where do we meet up, and all that?
Okay, on the first day, I mean, some of it is not 100% as far as where people are staying. You know, we have not put that in. People are going to have to find out where they want to stay. I put this hoodie on because I'm trying to block the wind, since you said the wind is a problem. Because I do feel it's beneficial to stay outside, because the energies are so lovely outside right now. It's clearing, and I feel like everything, you know, we definitely need a clearing right now. The land needs a clearing. We all need clearings, because we're just in crazy times. So that first day, the itinerary, which is on the 11th, we're going to have a meet and greet, and we're thinking that's going to be in Megget, which is between Charleston, South Carolina, and Edisto. And then that night, when we'll have snacks and different things like that. That night, we're going to go over to Edisto Island, and we are going to do what's called a Jehovian seal removal. These line up on the left side of the body, and it's how these seals connect to the earth grids, you know, the different spots. on the earth. Jehovian Seal 7 is in Charleston, and then 4 is off the coast of the Bahamas. But like I said, there's also a cathedral network there. So we're trying to mitigate the issues with the timelines. And number 3 is the Bermuda Triangle area. So it's off the coast of Bermuda somewhere. And then there's like 1, 2, but we're mainly working on those ones in that area and how that actually connects to the shots being fired. So after we do that, we're going to hopefully do some night vision, but there's a full moon. So we have to be very careful with night vision and full moons, because if anybody knows anything about the night vision, the intensifier tube with the protons that are turned into electrons are very sensitive to light and can actually damage the tube. So we have to be very careful with that. And then the next day, which is Saturday, which is April 12th, which is the anniversary of 1861, April 12th, when those first shots were fired, when the order was given at Fort Sumter. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet like a few minutes before 9 when the national park opens, and we'll have decided whether we're getting tickets ahead or how that's going to play out, because when you book this, it's all that'll be inclusive in the tour price. So what you will do is you'll have about a half an hour to read the notes that are up, the museum. There's a museum there. It talks about Fort Sumter. It talks about slavery, different things like that. And the reason we're doing the 9:30 tour is because we're going to have a docent that actually works for the national park that's going to give all the history when we're on the ferry boat, which is great. Much more comprehensive history that I can give you, because my history is coming more from what I see and from, spiritual, not just the physical, the names of all the people and, the dates and exactly what happened and how it happened. You're going to hear all that, and then you're going to arrive at Fort Sumter and be there for an hour or so to do boots on the ground, walking around to see what you actually feel when you're there. Then after that, we will come back on the ferry, and then it comes back to Liberty Square, and then we'll take some time for lunch. We were going to do, try to stay together for lunch, but I think we've decided that people can do whatever they want on their own, or we'll decide that day as a group, where we'll eat lunch and things like that. And then after that, we will reconvene, and there's different ways to do this. You can take public transport, you can take an Uber, you can drive. Walking's a little bit too far, and we're going to go to St. Michael's Church. Let me take these off for a minute. We're going to go to St. Michael's Church, and what's important about St. Michael's Church is that George Washington actually attended this church, which is Anglican, that became Episcopal. So it's the Church of England. And from there, and this is on Broad Street, and then from there, we're going to turn a corner and we're going to go over to Washington Square, where there's a 42-foot obelisk. And there's also a statue of George Washington. And when I did that walk just recently, see, I'm still learning about Charleston, because I haven't lived in the area that long. And also, even though my residence is technically supposedly in South Carolina, I actually spend much more time in North Carolina than I do in South Carolina, because my father's here, my friends are here, my previous life is here. It's just the reason we ended up in South Carolina is we built a house that was going to be a vacation rental, and then the COVID mess came in and it just changed everything. But my husband also has what's called a hip camp business. So if anybody wants to stay on Edisto, because on Edisto there's not really, there's vacation rentals. There's the Edisto Beach State Park. There's a Live Oak Campground, which is part of the Edisto State Park. And there's the Wyndham Resort, which is grandfathered in, but they don't have any, there aren't any hotels on the island. And that's strategic. And I will tell you why. Not only is Edisto an estuary, and there's a bunch of little islands there that are nurseries for animals, and there's like Monkey Island where the retired monkeys that were experimented on, all these kinds of things. But to the north, the Air Force shares the airport with the the commercial airlines in North Charleston, and to the south in Beaufort is Paris Island, which is the Marine base. And what's interesting about this is years ago, after January 6th, 2020, in February of that year, when I was leaving the pool one night, I happened to see two triangle craft just hovering in the middle of the road, kind of near some trees when I was driving, and I stopped in the middle of the road. Not that you can't stop because there's no traffic on Edisto. And I'm just sitting there with my tongue out looking at these two triangle craft that have their lights on, just hovering quietly, and they just all of a sudden turn their lights off and they just disappear and you don't even hear them. But I mean, I didn't think to grab my camera. Sometimes you're in that and you're just like frozen still and you're just like gawking at it. That was me. But I knew they were military. I knew these were ours. You just know, and they have the patents for those. So, uh, in that time, it was a lot of seeing, F-16s and 22s and 18s and cargo planes. Don't see that lately anymore, but that was back then. So, after we do the so what now, back to the obelisk. What's important about this obelisk? I'm feeling, I know Charleston is on a fault line, and Somerville is part of that fault line. However, I'm feeling, as of recently, there's a Mandela effect with that. There's something about that obelisk that holds timeline memories in place, and you don't want to just remove obelisks. Now, we know obelisks are actually energy harvesting devices. They harvest loose energy. They give it to interdimensionals, but those frequency fences and magnetics and things are put there for a reason during certain timelines, as for to hold memory, to hold stories, because you don't want to just not take, you don't want to remove an obelisk without putting something there to replace it, because there's a story to be told with an obelisk. Now let me tell you how this relates. Because in Asheville, they took the Vance Monument down, and that was named after Zebulon Vance. And that is kind of like now a festering wound in Asheville. It doesn't feel exactly right because there was nothing there to replace it with. And I wasn't called to do anything except to observe. But interestingly enough, when I happened to go to Mount Mitchell last year, and I went to Mount Mitchell 6 times, Mount Mitchell was finally clean, because the energy wasn't clean up there when you would walk to the top. It was always beautiful when you would walk the hiking trails around the spring, but when you'd actually walk to the overlook, if you took a compass, it wouldn't work. It would screw up. But now everything feels different, and that is because they took that obelisk down, and what was buried at Mount Mitchell with what's his name? Elijah Mitchell's grave cannot actually talk to the obelisk anymore. And you want to know what's really interesting about this? Let me do this again because of this is the air. What's really interesting about the obelisk is, and Zebulon Vance, is that J.D. Vance. If you look at pictures of J.D. Vance, he actually looks like Zebulon Vance. I'm telling you, you cannot make this stuff up. It is uncanny. Just do a search. Look up Zebulon Vance for the Vance Monument and J.D. Vance. And actually, I happened to find all this out on the day that Trump got shot the first time, when the whole thing happened, before all the other stuff was coming in, that whole thing. I was actually leaving Mount Mitchell at that time. So this obelisk in Charleston, what I was getting is, if it was just taken out, it could cause some kind of cataclysm or devastation. So tread lightly. And this, that flag, "Don't tread on me." We're going to get into that in a little bit. But we're going to do some clearing around the obelisk. And then after that, we're going to go see a place called the Blind Tiger that's now a restaurant. But at one time it was a speakeasy. So they ran illegal alcohol. They had gambling. They had all kinds of stuff going on. Is this okay with my mic, James?
No, it's not. Can you hold the mic to block the wind?
That's what I'm doing, and maybe I will go inside if there's a
Yeah,
way.
let's go
But I'm
inside.
just gonna shut off my camera for right now, and I'm gonna take it in. Okay.
Yeah, because we can't even enjoy the scenery because you have to
Okay.
zoom into your face to block the wind anyway.
Okay.
That way, our
We
listeners won't have
we
to have their
we
ears
tried to do that, but yeah, I'm just
um,
going to go ahead and
the
um,
scratching. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, I have a question. I mean, I did just make sure that area was, yeah, Edisto Island. So I think that area was part of the Timucon tribe. So the Timucon were a race of giants, red-haired giants that were cannibals that lived in that part of the world, all the way down into Jacksonville and further south in Florida. Well, obviously, Jacksonville didn't exist at the time when Timucon was around, but yeah. So, do you think that's maybe an offshoot of Atlantis? There, the giants. Do you know anything about the Timucon, Missy?
no, I don't, but I definitely feel it's a an offshoot of Atlantis. And when you talk about this, I'm thinking of the Tuatha De Danann too. Okay, one thing we do need to acknowledge is the Geechee Golem, which came from Africa when I get into the whole slave thing. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit after I finish the my part of the walking tour. And I'm going to go ahead and plug my device in right now since I'm indoors, so I might as well do that.
All right, Missy, thank you. So let's go to the next question. Will there be a divergence on the timeline this summer? That's from Francine. What do you think about that? 2025.
Hold on a second.
Because I was told years ago that Nasara was going to be announced April 15th of 2025. And the way it was described to me, it wasn't going to be like what we think it's going to be. It's going to be more of a slow trickle of funds. It's going to start off little, and then they're going to make sure people can handle the money, and then more and more is going to come out. So, and then that's when we find out the Doge dividend checks. They're discussing about how much, maybe $5,000-$10,000 a month. So
I was
that would
hoping
correspond to the end of the IRS. Go ahead, Missy.
I was hoping that Doge had something to do with that, but I prefer not to answer that because I don't like to make predictions when it comes to that stuff because some people are complaining about Doge right now, people in the medical field saying there's money being taken away, but I'm saying is that because they want to bring med beds? I hope so, but we can't ever predict because people thought all that stuff was going to happen in 2020 and the past few years and it didn't. So we don't know the timeline of any of the rollouts of any of this stuff. I just know we have to do our part and keep pushing to make it happen because these public servants are our servants and they have to be held accountable so they don't get greedy and just take for themselves. They're being used by God's source first eternal to get what we need into place. So I still think the reckoning is the clean out right now. It's getting rid of it's the still in, I think we're still in the swamp draining process, which actually is very important even for Edisto, because speaking of the whole swamp thing, I noticed that after some of the clearings that, India and our groups have been doing, the waters even look better in Edisto because the Edisto River has looked like mucky and dark, like seeing bog bodies or something. Like because this is what happened in Western North Carolina when all those floods happened. Some of the people that died in that river, they were preserved instantly in that river. That's going to be mixed with silt. It's going to go downstream. Where does it end up? It keeps coming down the rivers. It probably ends up in South Carolina in those rivers that look like they were holding black goo. I'm telling you, some of this water, it's been looking so yucky that we have to clear. It's almost like having a clogged drain where the water from the aquifers has to come up from underneath, and there needs to be a clearing in these waters. And that's another reason for clearing the shots at Fort Sumter, to clear the waters, because I tend to work with Water Command. That's what I'm doing to help clear the waters. So after we look at the blind tiger, then we're going to walk down. We're going to just take a quick look at the Dockside Theater because all the world's a stage. And then there's a French Huguenot church, which, that's important because the daughters of the Confederacy. You don't hear that much about the women in the Confederate timelines. And you know what else is neat about Charleston? There's these old cobblestone streets. So you get to see and walk on the original streets And people will also have time, at the end of what we're doing, if they want to go take a carriage tour, or they want to go do a haunted tour at night, or just walk the streets, or go see, the market center where you can go, where they make the baskets, and the indoor flea market. There'll be time to do that kind of stuff, because I would recommend, if people do this, that they stay, and maybe they go over and see Patriots Point, or they go see the first Civil War submarine, the Hunley. There's all kinds of stuff to do. It's very historical, because the significance of Charleston, it's one of the oldest cities, but it was the fourth wealthiest cities during colonial times.
And there's a great plant nursery called Hyman's, so I might go down there too. But I went down there last year, and anyway. Okay, so thank you, Missy. Is there anything else you want to share about? Oh, I know. I know.
We're not done with the tour part. So
Oh, okay, never mind.
finish that, then we're going to go by the slave mart, but we're not going to go in there because it's just a bunch of reading, and it's sad, and it made me feel sick. But I have some disclosure on the whole slave, what they showed me when I was there. Well, first of all, there was a sign in there that shows the worth of a slave. Okay. The worth is like, if somebody was 20 years old, they were worth, they would sell them for $900. If they were baby, it'd be like maybe 50. Or if somebody was 60, they would sell them for $50. So, it was, the closer you were to 20, that means you could work the hardest. And I'm sure men got, they charge more for men than women, but they tried to keep families together. They oiled them up, they fed them. But what was disturbing, in a way that bothered me, is when I was upset about this, I was actually hearing the Geechee say, because the Geechee are the ones that actually preserve the African tradition in coastal, South Carolina, Georgia, places like that. They were saying, but this is the way that we wanted to get to America. I mean, on a higher level. This is not their personality. Like, we needed to be on American soil, and they had no commodity. They didn't have anything to trade, so they sold their own people into slavery. And I guess some of them were criminals, and then they end up coming over to work on a plantation, and the crops at that time were rice, cotton, and indigo primarily, which was used for dye, to dye clothing and things like that. And then after that was done, then they would sell the goods back to Europe. So this was like a triangle that the ships made, and you'll see that. And so we'll gather some more information on that, how that's awful. But what the other thing is, we've all been slaves, and we're all commerce, and we are all currency. Current sea current, seeing the money system, and it's all tied to maritime law. After we
Oh,
finish
so
that, we go to the provost dungeon. And to me, this is the highlight and the most fun of the whole tour. This is the part that I really love, because once you get in that place, you get to see people dressed up in period costume, and you're going to get to go in to the dungeon, not only where they stored the gunpowder from the powder magazine, which we can't go to because that's too far away, but you can go see it. Many of the patriots, sons of liberty, and people like that, Gadsden, the guy that came up with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. These people were stuck and jailed in the dungeon, but it was also a customs house. It was, they had slaves there, they had stuff to sell there, they housed the gunpowder there. There was a moat there, because at one time the river systems and the water was different in Charleston, so you can actually look down, and people throw coins into the water system down below. I mean, they built around where this moat was, because it was like a walled city with a moat. And if you go upstairs into the building where it is now, that's where they debated the Constitution. It wasn't necessarily ratified there, but they had a lot of discussions. So yeah, I mean, it's just very interesting. And then there's a thing with the Declaration of Independence where you can sign your name. And then, so we'll probably spend just an hour at the Provost Dungeon and the Exchange. And then after that, you'll see where the oldest liquor store in the United States was. It's called the Tavern of Rainbow Row. And Rainbow Row's like my shirt. See my shirt? It's all these colorful houses. That's why they call it Rainbow Row. But what's important about this and why this is connected to Charleston with the triangulation, with the Bermuda Triangle, with the first shots of war codes being held there, with the division and polarization against race wars, masculine, feminine, all the things being split out is because if somebody has addiction, the spirit of Al Ghul lurks, right? Which is not just alcohol, not just drugs and those kind of addictions, but it's also the algorithm. And I feel that the time that we're doing this in a time where there's a singularity, convergence approaching towards an Atlantean timeline. And we don't want to go down the same path of AI and also the rainbow row, to the reverse rainbow. At least now, boys are boys and girls are girls. There's not all these pronouns anymore, right? We're getting rid of the whole pronoun thing. That doesn't work, but there's still a race towards this AI. And if somebody is gender confused, that gender confusion makes them more apt to and more susceptible to transhumanism, which is what the agenda has been, Agenda 2030 for, these AI robots and these data collection centers. This is a big override that we do not consent to this. Don't tread on me. We are the sons and daughters of liberty now and freedom. Don't tread on this. We do not consent to these timelines that they want to propagate. We do not consent to world domination and control. So Charleston holds all those future timeline memories because it is part of Atlantis. And also, it ties in with the whole thing with Puerto Rico, as I was saying, because in Puerto Rico, what did Christopher Columbus do? He removed the Taino Indians off their land. Well, Edisto and these areas where the Geechee were, it was the Edisto Indians, and they also, they remember the name Edisto for the Edisto Indians, but where are they now? Just like the Cherokee were removed from their land to Oklahoma. So we do not consent to this removal because they have us to be removed next. It doesn't matter your race, what gender you are. They're coming for us because you know what? We're just like with those slaves. We don't have any worth or value when robots come in, which is what they want. What worth or value do we have if we don't work? We know our God's sovereign free right as divine angelic human beings that our rights come from God's source first eternal. But I'm saying in the matrix here, what is our worth? We do not consent to what they're doing. And then after we've done all that, then we'll take a walk down to the Battery. We'll go see the water. We'll go stand by the pineapple fountain because the pineapple it's a beautiful fountain and that's about welcome. But there is a lot going on with the reverse pineapple right now in South Carolina. If somebody wears a reverse pineapple, that has to do with sexual distortions, lasciviousness, swinger stuff. So another thing we do not consent to. And then, we'll walk around. There's places to get a smoothie if you want. We can go see the Vendu. The Vendu is a very interesting hotel that is artsy fartsy, but also has an undercurrent of an eyes wide shut kind of weirdness like Mardi Gras. But you can go up to the top, you can see Charleston, you can get something to eat. And that pretty much concludes day 2, and people can do what they want the rest of the day. And then day 3 is just going to be all about healing, like sound healing, prayers, good food. And that's probably going to be it, Megan. So I left a link. And like I said, it's not just me doing this tour. This is something that I pitched to Indigo Angel, and she actually heard it. So she's the one that has the more of the funding, the websites. She's that person. I'm not that tech person. I just show up and do what I do. So
Wow, Missy, that sounds amazing. So that's coming up really soon. That's even less than a month away.
right.
So, so tell people about where they can go purchase their ticket. And on that website, there's another lady there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's that about?
Okay, Indigo Angel, I said, is the one who's actually hosting. So it's through her website, but I have a referral code, which is the link that I sent you. So through this show, they want to click on that link that takes them to the landing page and will answer all their questions. If they have information, they might just want to DM me or email me too. Okay, so I'll give you my email. That's probably the best way to do this. So, we coordinate with the one that's actually doing more of the marketing strategy of this whole thing than I am.
What can you tell us about Indigo Angel?
Well, Indigo Angel is also definitely a psychic grid reader and a healer, where she does, boots on the ground grid missions, as well as like private session work. I also do private session work, but I haven't been advertising it lately. And I do something called the Quantum Infinity, and I can do readings and things like that, but I just haven't because my life has been very busy. And I have other things that I'm doing for, that I don't have to do it in this moment. I mean, it would be helpful, but she needs it. She actually needs to do it more, because it's actually her bread and butter. So what you would just want to do is go to her YouTube channel and look up Indigo Angel. Okay, and it's her website is indigoangel222.com. So she had like an angelic, experience where she got a download, and I'll just go read about her story. It's just hard for me to say 100% remember everybody's story. I got to remember mine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Missy. So, everybody, click on the link in the description in the video and come on out and join us on tour. I'm going to be there, Missy, right? So, I have plans on being there.
Yeah.
And
Does
I love.
anybody have any questions?
Oh, okay. Yes. I haven't seen too many questions come in. I think we did a good job here covering this. So, let's see here. Someone says, I've still been trying to wrap my brain around this possibility. I would be comfortable talking off the line. Oh. Okay, Green. Yes, yes. Send me a message. supersoldiertalk@gmail.com. And only for, yeah, anybody else wants to send an email, just make sure you have some kind of credible evidence. Somebody. Uh, anyway. Let's see here. We've got Kelly. I was trying to find the video for the Mandela effect thing, but
Oh, yeah. People wonder why that is, because my feeling is I became aware of this on a TED talk when this guy was talking to, he said he was something about, I think his name was Giorgio, and he said being in front of this quantum computer was like um, bowing before an alien god. I think this has to do with the Willy Wonkas and the particle accelerators, like CERN things, the Harry system up in, I'm trying to use certain words, I don't know if I have to be careful with the words that I use on your show, but those particle accelerator places, and they have many of them. Even Western North Carolina, I think, had one in the Rosman area under the PARI. If somebody wants to look up that, there's a website called Skyships Over Cashiers. If you know Mary Joyce, they talk a lot about that kind of stuff on there. What this weird stuff that goes on in North Carolina. But yeah, I think the Mandela effect has happened, because I actually think in a way we're in a different program or some kind of different Earth than we were. Just look at our sun. As a kid, there was a yellow sun. I don't recognize this white sun. And even like we're in a timeline where Tartaria exists now. I don't remember that from the previous before the Mandela effects. I think that's a Mandela effect that's actually brought Tartaria in. That's what I think. But and so for now it's relevant. But just like mirror, mirror on the wall doesn't exist anymore. They say it's magic mirror on the wall, but there's still a movie, an old residue of the old timeline, because there's a movie called Mirror Mirror.
so that line was actually another remakes. So people remembered it so much it got, yeah. And then it was like, was it Britney Spears skirt? It used to be like gray, white, and pink, like this plaid, and now it's just gray. So anyway, okay. Let's see here. I think that might cover it. I really appreciate all the great feedback we got from the chat today. Missy, I want to say thank you for coming on here and What does everybody think about the artwork? I was up
I love
really.
this artwork. I think it's so great. I love it. I love it.
And there's Missy over here. Oh, she's over there in that corner. But yeah. So I was up real late, like putting all this together for you. But all
You
right.
did a
Well,
good thumbnail. I need to learn. I need to learn how to use AI. I'm just not. I haven't learned it very well yet. I'm trying.
okay. Well, it may or may not have been AI created, but it's for just for you to enjoy and for us to figure out. So everybody, Missy, shall we call it?
Yeah, I think we're great, and I'll let you know. So everybody, email me Hill Hill Night NITE Vision VISION Hill Night Vision at gmail.com. Friend me on Facebook, follow me on X, and I'm on Instagram, and that's it. I keep it real simple these days, so that's it. And then I've also been on Indie's show, Typical Skeptic. Rob, we give a shout out and prayers for Rob because I know he's having real problems with his keeping his channels stable right now. And I've also been on Annie Sophine's channel, Quantum Messages, recently, and the All That Is channel recently.
Very good. Yes. I know. Didn't Rob just get another video deleted on his new account?
I think so. Yeah.
Mm, okay. All right, everybody. We'll
Well,
see you
that's it
all.
for now, James. Let's hang out soon. Let's
Okay.
hopefully see y'all on the tour.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on
Yeah.
Misty Hills, Let Freedom Ring, and Healing Gridwork Tour, and also Indigo Angel too. So we'll see you all later. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks, James.